What if I told you that a single Supreme Court decision can quietly shift the lives of over 330 million people in a matter of hours? Sounds impossible. But history shows that one ruling from the highest court in the United States can trigger economic panic, political outrage, and nationwide confusion almost instantly. On June 4th, headlines exploded, claiming a 7-2 Supreme Court ruling had sent shockwaves across America, sparking debates, protests, and fear about what comes next. But what really happens when a decision like this drops? Why does one court verdict feel like a national earthquake? In this video, we break down 10 shocking reasons why Supreme Court rulings can shake an entire country, from financial markets to social media chaos and public reaction. And trust me, some of these effects happen faster than breaking news can. Even explain them. So subscribe now in 1 second, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see the law and power in America. When people hear about a Supreme Court ruling, they often think it is just another legal decision, but in reality, it is something far bigger. The Supreme Court of the United States sits at the very top of the entire legal system. That means there is no higher authority to challenge its decisions. Once a ruling is announced, it becomes the law of the land, immediately affecting every state, every city, and every citizen. Now imagine the impact of that. A single decision made by just 9 judges can reshape how laws are interpreted across an entire country of more than 330 million people. Whether it is about freedom, business rules, education, policies, or digital rights, the ruling does not stay limited to one place. It spreads nationwide, like a legal ripple effect. This is where the tension begins. Even a 7-2 decision, which shows a strong majority, still reflects disagreement at the highest level. And that disagreement often signals that the issue itself is deeply controversial. When the public sees that kind of split, it naturally raises questions. Is this really fair? Will this affect my rights? What changes now? According to legal scholars, Supreme Court rulings often set precedents, meaning they become examples for future cases. Once a precedent is set, lower courts across the country must follow it. That is why one decision today can influence hundreds or even thousands of cases in the future. To put it simply, the Supreme Court is not just interpreting law, it is actively shaping the direction of an entire nation. And that is why even a single ruling can feel like a national shockwave, instantly changing how people think, react, and prepare for the future. When a major Supreme Court ruling drops, the impact is not limited to courtrooms or headlines. It can quickly spread into the financial world, and that's where things get intense. One decision can create uncertainty, and in the economy, uncertainty is powerful enough to move billions of dollars within hours. Imagine this: investors sitting in front of screens, watching news alerts flash about a 7-2 Supreme Court ruling. Even before fully understanding the details, markets can react instantly. Stocks may rise or fall based on what people think. The ruling means for businesses, taxes, or regulations. This is because markets don't wait for full clarity. They react to fear, expectation, and speculation. For example, if a ruling affects corporate rules, healthcare systems, or technology laws, companies immediately start recalculating risks. Big investors may pull money out, while others rush in to take advantage of predicted changes. This creates a chain reaction that can lead to sudden market volatility. But the impact doesn't stop on Wall Street. It eventually reaches everyday people. When companies feel uncertain, they may slow down hiring, delay investments, or increase prices to protect themselves. That means ordinary citizens can feel the effect through job markets, inflation, and cost of living changes. Experts in behavioral economics explain that humans react strongly to legal and political uncertainty because it signals possible future disruption. Even if nothing changes immediately, the possibility of change is enough to influence decisions across industries. That's why a Supreme Court ruling is not just a legal headline, it becomes an economic signal. It tells businesses, investors, and governments to prepare for a new direction. And in moments like these, the economy doesn't move slowly. It reacts like a wave. A single ruling can quietly trigger financial ripples that touch everything from billion-dollar corporations to the price of goods in your local market. When a Supreme Court ruling is announced, especially something as intense as a 7-2 decision, it doesn't just stay inside legal circles, it immediately spills into the political world, where reactions are fast, emotional, and often deeply divided. Why does this happen? Because in today's world, law and politics are closely connected. A single ruling can be seen as a victory for one ideology and a loss for another. That is where the tension begins. Politicians, activists, and public figures quickly step in, each trying to interpret the decision in a way that supports their side. Within hours, you may see completely opposite reactions, one group calling it a step toward justice and progress, while another describes it as a threat to rights or tradition. This clash of interpretations creates a political firestorm, where the focus shifts from facts to emotions. Experts in political communication explain that high-profile court rulings often act like fuel on already existing divisions. Instead of calming tensions, they sometimes intensify debates across the country, especially on sensitive topics like freedom, government, power, or personal rights. Then comes the role of media and speeches. Politicians may hold press conferences, release statements, or even organize rallies. Each message spreads rapidly through television and social media, amplifying public reactions even more. What starts as a legal judgment quickly turns into a national conversation filled with arguments, debates, and protests. This is also where confusion grows. Many people don't not read the full legal details. They only hear simplified versions online. That leads to misunderstandings, emotional responses, and sometimes even misinformation, spreading faster than the truth. In the end, a Supreme Court ruling becomes more than just law. It becomes a political symbol, representing different beliefs, fears, and hopes. And that is why one decision can divide conversations across an entire nation in just a matter of hours. The moment a major Supreme Court ruling drops, the first place it explodes is not the courtroom, it is social media. Within minutes, platforms like X, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube turn into a nonstop wave of reactions, opinions, and emotional posts. But here's the shocking part. Most people don't read the full ruling. Instead, they see short clips, headlines, or viral posts that simplify or sometimes exaggerate what actually happened. This creates a fast-moving cycle where information spreads faster than verification. According to communication studies, emotional content travels up to 6 times faster than factual explanations online. That means anger, fear, and surprise often dominate the conversation before experts even finish analyzing the decision. Hashtags start trending, influencers give hot takes, comment sections turn into debates, and suddenly, a legal ruling becomes a viral digital battlefield where everyone has an opinion, but not everyone has the full story. This environment also opens the door to misinformation and confusion. One post may say the ruling changes everything, while another says it changes nothing. For the average viewer, it becomes difficult to know what is true. What makes it even more powerful is the emotional impact. Social media is designed to trigger quick reactions, not deep understanding. So people engage instantly, share quickly, and react strongly, even if they are missing context. In the end, the ruling itself is only part of the story. The real shockwave often comes from how it is interpreted, reshaped, and amplified online. And in today's world, a legal decision doesn't just stay in the courts. It becomes a global conversation within seconds. One of the most intense aftershocks of a major Supreme Court ruling is the tension it can create between state governments and federal authority. When a decision lands, especially a controversial one like a 7-2 ruling, it does not always end the debate. In some cases, it actually starts a new one. Why? Because the United States is built on a system where power is shared between states and the federal government. But when the Supreme Court issues a ruling, it sets a national standard. That means every state is expected to follow it. However, not every state always agrees with how that ruling should be applied in real life. This is where confusion begins. Some states may quickly implement the decision, while others may delay, reinterpret, or even challenge how it is enforced. This creates a patchwork of responses across the country, where the same ruling feels different depending on where you live. Legal experts explain that this tension often leads to administrative delays, court challenges, and policy adjustments at the state level. Local governments may request clarification and pass new rules or test the limits of the ruling in lower courts. For ordinary citizens, this can be extremely confusing. People may hear that a law has changed nationally, but their state might not reflect that change immediately. This gap between federal rulings and state implementation creates uncertainty in everyday life. In some cases, it even leads to additional lawsuits that go back into the court system, continuing the cycle of legal debate. So instead of bringing instant clarity, a Supreme Court decision can sometimes open a new layer of complexity where states and federal authority quietly struggle to align, and the nation watches closely to see how it all unfolds. When a major Supreme Court ruling is announced, the impact is not only legal or political, it is deeply emotional. Many people don't immediately understand the full legal details, but they do feel the possibility of change in their daily lives, and that feeling alone can create widespread fear and uncertainty. Human psychology plays a big role here. Studies in behavioral science show that people are naturally more sensitive to uncertainty than to actual outcomes. In simple terms, the idea that something might change is often more stressful than the change itself. So when headlines announce a powerful ruling like a 7-2 Supreme Court decision, people start imagining worst-case scenarios. Questions begin to spread quickly. Will my rights change? Will prices go up? Will my job or future be affected? Even if the ruling has a narrow legal scope, the emotional reaction can be much bigger than the actual impact. This fear is amplified through conversations, news discussions, and social media reactions. People talk to friends and family, often repeating incomplete or misunderstood information. As a result, concern spreads faster than clarity. Experts in public behavior explain that during moments of legal or political change, societies often go through a phase of collective anxiety, where individuals feel unsure about what the future holds. This doesn't come from the ruling itself, but from the uncertainty around it. In the end, the Supreme Court is not just shaping law, it is also influencing public emotion. And in moments like these, even a single decision can create a wave of fear, curiosity, and anticipation that spreads far beyond the courtroom. When a Supreme Court ruling hits the news, especially something framed as a 7-2 decision, the media does not just report it quietly. Instead, it often becomes a breaking headline event. And that is where the story starts to intensify. Beyond the 7 courtroom, news networks compete for attention, and attention is driven by emotion. So words like shock, crisis, historic, and nation-changing begin to appear in headlines. Even if the legal ruling is technical or limited in scope, the way it is presented can make it feel massive and urgent. This creates a powerful effect. People don't just hear about a court decision. They feel like something dramatic has happened to the entire country. Experts in media psychology explain that sensational headlines are designed to trigger curiosity and emotional engagement, which increases views, clicks, and shares. As a result, different outlets may frame the same ruling in very different ways. One channel might describe it as a major breakthrough, while another calls it a serious setback. This difference in framing can confuse the public and deepen division. Then comes the 24/7 news cycle. With constant updates, expert panels, and debates, the ruling is repeated again and again, each time with slightly different interpretations. This repetition makes the event feel even bigger than it actually is. For viewers, it becomes difficult to separate legal facts from media interpretation. Many people only consume headlines or short clips, not full explanations. In the end, media does not just report Supreme Court decisions, it amplifies them, reshapes them, and turns them into national conversations that feel urgent, emotional, and larger than life. When a major Supreme Court ruling is announced, big companies don't wait for public debate to settle. They react almost immediately, especially in cases described as a 7-2 decision. Businesses start analyzing what the ruling could mean for their future operations, profits, and legal responsibilities. Large corporations operate in a world where even small legal changes can mean millions or even billions of dollars in impact. So the moment a ruling is released, internal teams begin working fast. Lawyers, financial analysts, and executives all try to answer one urgent question: how does this affect us? If the ruling touches areas like technology, healthcare, finance, or labor laws, companies may need to adjust their policies right away. Some might pause expansion plans, while others may rush to update compliance systems. This creates a ripple effect across entire industries. Stock markets often react quickly to this uncertainty. Investors try to predict which companies will benefit and which might struggle under the new legal interpretation. That's why you sometimes see sudden price changes even before the full core implications are understood. Experts in corporate behavior explain that businesses prefer stability over change because predictable rules allow long-term planning. But when a Supreme Court decision shifts the legal landscape, it forces companies to rethink strategies overnight. For everyday people, this might seem distant, but the effects eventually reach them. Changes in corporate decisions can influence job hiring, product prices, services, and even innovation speed. So while the courtroom sees a legal decision, the business world sees a strategic turning point. And in moments like these, one ruling can quietly reshape entire industries before most people even realize what is happening. One of the most overlooked impacts of a major Supreme Court ruling is not legal or political. It is psychological. When a decision like a 7-2 ruling makes headlines, it introduces something powerful into society: uncertainty. And uncertainty has a very real effect on how people think, behave, and make decisions. Human beings are naturally wired to prefer stability. Our brains feel safer when we know what comes next. But when a major ruling is announced, especially one that is widely debated or misunderstood, it creates a gap between what is known and what is unknown. That gap triggers what psychologists call the uncertainty effect. In simple terms, people start imagining possible outcomes, even extreme ones. They begin to wonder how the ruling might affect their rights, finances, or future opportunities. Even if the actual legal change is small, the perception of change can feel much bigger. This mental reaction spreads quickly through conversations, workplaces, and social media. People discuss what they heard, ask questions, and sometimes repeat incomplete information. Over time, this builds a shared sense of anxiety or confusion, even without direct impact. Research in behavioral science shows that uncertainty can influence decision-making. People may delay plans, become more cautious with money, or avoid risks until they feel clarity returns. This is why markets, businesses, and individuals often react strongly to legal developments. In the end, the Supreme Court ruling is not just shaping laws, it is shaping how people think and feel in the moment. And that psychological ripple can be just as powerful as the ruling itself, spreading across society long after the headlines fade. The final and perhaps most powerful impact of a major Supreme Court ruling is something most people don't notice right away: its long-term ripple effect. A single decision, especially a 7-2 ruling, does not just solve one case. It can quietly shape the legal system for years, even decades. In the United States, Supreme Court decisions often become precedents, which means they act like guiding examples for all future courts. Lower courts across the country are expected to follow these interpretations when similar cases appear. So even if people forget the headline news, the ruling continues working in the background of the legal system. This is where the real transformation happens. Over time, lawyers begin to build new arguments based on the ruling. Judges refer back to it when making decisions, and lawmakers may even adjust or create new laws to align with it. Experts explain that this is how the legal system evolves, not through sudden change, but through layered decisions that build on each other. One ruling today can influence hundreds of cases tomorrow, and thousands in the future. For society, this means the effects are often invisible. At first, people may not feel immediate change in their daily lives, but gradually, laws around business, rights, technology, or government power begin to shift in subtle ways. That is why Supreme Court rulings are considered so important. They are not just momentary events, they are long-term turning points that help shape the direction of an entire nation. And in that sense, The real impact of a single decision often unfolds quietly, long after the initial shock and headlines have disappeared. A single Supreme Court ruling is never just a legal event. It is a national shockwave that can touch every part of society, from the economy and politics to social media, emotions, and long-term laws. The effects spread far beyond the courtroom. What starts as a 7-2 decision can quickly turn into public debate, market reactions, and even psychological uncertainty across millions of people. But understanding these 10 reasons helps us see the bigger picture behind the headlines. Not just the drama, but the deeper system shaping a nation's future. Stay informed, stay curious, and always look beyond the noise.